Hey guys, today's video isn't my normal build videos, which would be vlog 23. There's been quite a few requests about my electrical system. I've had a lot of questions about various different areas of the van, because I do fully appreciate that where my videos are not tutorial videos, I don't spend a long time on each sort of area. For example, I never showed you in great detail me fitting all the electrics. I never showed you in great detail fitting the solar panels. Everything I throw together very quickly in montages. So I've had a few emails and quite a few requests on direct messages or personal messages on Instagram asking if I could explain a little bit about the electrical system. They've asked specific questions like going from the battery into the Sterling or into a VSR or whatever sort of B2B sort of unit you're using. So I'm going to go from the vehicle battery to the inside here and show you exactly what's what and what I've used, and in some cases why I've used those products. So before I do, the next build video will be out within the next sort of few days, like 3 or 4 days. So I'm working on that at the moment. Due to other sort of personal commitments, I've not had the time to throw myself into the last final few stages of the build, but I have all the materials now and I'm starting to put together, starting to get all the doors fitted, and we did spend our first night away in the van, literally 2 miles around the corner. So spent a couple of nights away actually, and it was quite pleasant. The idea is I wanted to go away, I wanted to put the TV on there. It's a 32-inch TV. We had the fan, the max fan running low, so we couldn't really hear it. It wasn't needed, but we had it running. And then we had most of the lights on, and of course the fridge is running permanently. So really just to stress test the electrical system. So unfortunately on these 2 days it just happened to be quite grey, and I was getting very little power through the solar. So it gave me a good idea, just with everything running, what sort of battery life I'm going to get out of my AGM leisure batteries that I've got. So anyway, let's get into it now and let me explain everything I've got, and hopefully I pretty much cover all bases. And I'm not going to go into how I've fitted everything. I'm going to try and give you as detailed explanation as possible of what's in place, i.e. fuses or breakers, and the particular products I've used. So let's crack on, guys. So right, we're at the front end now. Obviously the engine does need a good clean. It is a bit manky up here, but right, so first of all, ignore all this wiring. That is all going to get tidied up and sort of all taped and zip tied together, so it's all nice and neat and waterproof where it needs to be. Anyway, so basically coming off the battery, the positive terminal, we've got 50mm squared cable going into a 100 amp breaker. Off of this 100 amp breaker, we've got the same cable, 50mm squared cable. Now basically from this point going into where my batteries are, I've used exactly 5 meters of cable. Off the breaker, we're going, then it's going through conduit. You can see the trunk in there, just to protect it while it's running underneath the bodywork. So anyway, back inside. Right, turn the light on. This is the cable, the 50mm squared cable that is coming in from the vehicle battery, going into another 100 amp breaker. We've got about 3 inches of 50mm squared cable. No, I apologise, that's 35mm squared cable going from the breaker into this B2B, which is the Sterling BB1260 unit, which is 60 amp. They do the 1230, but I wanted maximum charge capacity as possible, so I went for the 60 amp. Some people argue that it's possibly putting a little bit too much into the batteries, but the way I look at it, if I'm desperate for the charge, I'd sooner lose a a few months. You know, if the batteries, these particular batteries, come with a 4-year guarantee, so if I get 2.5, 3 years out of them, then happy days. You know, I'd rather get the quickest charge I can out of this 1260 unit instead of the 1230. This was in my last build, which I never got to use, and again, it was one of the products that fortunately I was able to rip out before the insurance company got their hands on it. Right, we're going from the breaker into the Sterling B2B. Of course, that's the negative or the earth. Out of the B2B, just to try and keep things nice and neat, I've done the holes in the board there, so it's running through the back, around here, along onto the positive of the leisure batteries. Leisure batteries, I've got 3 times 120 amp hour AGM batteries. As these start to fail, once they fail, then I will be upgrading to lithium at that point. But as I say, if I can get a couple of years out of these, 2 or 3 years, I will use them for the 2 or 3 years. When they do fail, I will be upgrading to lithium. The earths or negatives, all negatives, because I'm running using a Victron BMV 712 battery monitor. All the earths, all the negatives, let's say, are all going into this one bus bar here, and then that bus bar is joined on to the shunt. Now this is a 500 amp shunt, which is basically part of the BMV 712 battery monitor. And then this shunt is then attached to the negative of the leisure batteries. You do have to connect every single negative from everything that is running off of your 12 volt system has to be connected to the shunt. So I've just gone through to a bus bar that is connected to the shunt, because I don't want everything coming off of the one nut there. So and my OCD wouldn't have allowed me to have connected everything to one. I needed things to be as neat as possible. So solar system. So I have 500 watts of solar panels on the roof. I've got 3 times 100 watt solar panels and 1 times 200 watt solar panel. They're going into the Victron MPPT 100-30, which is the 30 amp solar charge controller. These are the cables coming from the solar panels. Okay, they're the 6mm cables. I have the positive going into this breaker. Now I'm using this fuse because it came as a kit with this controller, so I didn't feel the need to have to buy something just so that it looked similar to the rest of them. So I've used the fuse that come with this. So from the solar panels, it's going into the fuse, and then out of the fuse it's going into the positive side of the solar charge controller. And the negative cable is just going straight into the solar panels. And then from the battery, the 3 leisure batteries, we've got the positive cable. Now the positive cable is going directly to the positive of the leisure batteries, but the negative cable again is going to the negative bus bar, which is attached to the shunt unit for the BMV 712 battery monitor. If I could very, very quickly come back to the Sterling B2B 1260, they say that ideally, to make them more efficient, now I can't get my head around this, because at the end of the day, the vehicle battery is ultimately earthed off of the chassis of the vehicle. So for some reason they suggest taking the negative from this all the way back to the vehicle battery again. I've not done that. I never done it in my last vehicle, in a previous build. It all works absolutely fine. It charges up beautifully. You set the charge parameters on this to, you can either have them default or you can set them to whatever your battery manufacturers suggest for bulk charging, float charging, etc. So So I've got this going to a very, very good charging point on the chassis underneath the vehicle, where I'm only using 1.5 meters of cable instead of 5 meters of cable, because I would have had to have used the same amount of cable for that as I used for the positive, which was 5 meters. So yeah, I forgot to sort of mention that about the B2B 1260 earlier. So right, where was we? Solar. So I think that pretty much covers the solar setup. Just as a summary, we've got 500 watts of solar panels on the roof going into an MPPT 100-30, which is a 30 amp Victron solar charge controller. And then, you know, obviously I've explained how it's all connected to the batteries and how it's all connected to the system. Right, so this unit here I've had for, I would say, probably around 9 years. This unit has come out of a build that I made, like I say, about 9-10 years ago. It's only a 20 amp. Ideally I would like a 30 or a 40 amp charger. I've seen the question asked quite a few times with regards to your solar charge controller and your battery charger, and maybe the B2B as well. Do they conflict? Do you need to switch any of them off before driving? Like, do I need to, I mean, obviously if I'm driving, then the battery charger, the 240 volt battery charger, is not going to be on anyway. But I never turn the solar charge controller off. I never actually turn any of them off. That gets turned off when I pull the lead out of the electric hookup socket. Okay, that incidentally is running into the mains 240 volt mains consumer unit. But anyway, moving on. So no, I never have an issue with any of them conflicting. So I then switch on the engine, start the engine up, and this kicks in and starts charging the batteries. You know, if it's bulk charging, what, 14.6 or thereabouts. You can manually put in all the parameters you want into this unit. AGM2 setting on this seemed to cover all the bases I need. The only thing I have done with this, which I didn't like about the unit, I've run a cable that, basically there's an ignition setting on this. So I've run a cable from this to an ignition live, because when you turn this unit off, or sorry, when you turn your engine off, this thing's still whirring away for the next 5 minutes or so. I don't like that. I've run an ignition live wire so that when I turn the engine on, turn the ignition on, it turns this on, and when I switch the engine off, it turns this off. That, to me, I'm in full control of whether this thing's working or not. And of course, if I didn't want to use it at all, then all I've got to do is just press the like for example, I just press that and it trips it out. So that now is not going to work at all. So back to the 240 volt battery charger. That is running into this 40 amp breaker, and then from this 40 amp breaker I'm going to the positive of the leisure batteries. So what I've got is all charging sources, the solar, 240 hookup and the B2B, all charging sources, the positives, and these are the only positives that are going directly to the batteries, nothing else. And then off of the other side of the battery bank, I've got this 50mm squared battery cable that is running, coming through here into this switch here. So if I turn that off, that then isolates all of my 12 volt electronics. The inverter is something that I will be changing, and I will be changing it very soon. I've seen some horror nightmare reviews regarding this inverter, and I've seen a few good reviews. I will be changing this very, very soon. I'm debating whether to go for the one of the Victron power inverters, but disregarding changing or not, it's still all set up the same way. So the positive, so pointing to the negative, so again the negative is going through the board, and and the negative is running to the negative bus bar, and the positive, as you can see, is going into this fuse. The reason why I'm using this fuse and not one of these breakers is because this came with the inverter. So because it's come with it, with the correct 175 watt fuse, because it all came as a package, I'm using it. I'm not going to go and spend another tenner on buying one of these just to keep them all looking the same. So that's why I'm using the fuse here. So off the positive into this 175 amp fuse, and of course out the other side into the positive bus bar. What I've got is coming out of this plug socket in the top of the inverter. Coming out, I'm going into the back of a plug socket, and then I come out of that plug socket, which is this one. So I spur off of that plug socket, the cable's running down there, so they're coming through there, along, down into the plug sockets here, okay? And then I'm spurring. Now these plug sockets are here, I've got two running off the inverter. Now these are here because this area here is going to be storage for our e-scooters. Anyway, we're spurring off of this socket, we're then going back up through the trunking, and then those are the cables going along again. And in the overhead locker here I have another two sockets. Again, one of them is the one double socket is running off of the inverter, the other double socket is running off of 240 hookup. These sockets are to power the TV either on the inverter, or I just simply swap the plug over and I put them into the 240 hookup socket. So sticking with the 12 volt system, this is the 12 volt fuse box, and absolutely every single 12 volt item in this van is fused in the habitation area, is fused through that, which leaves finally the 240 volt setup. I've kept it as simple as possible. So this is my 240 hookup point. It's as it goes down, this is magnetic, so it's just a simple lift up magnetic lid that then goes through to the mains consumer unit, and all I've set up on this quite simply the main breaker and the two little fuses, the two little breakers. One is for the 240 volt hookup, 240 volt charger, and the other fuse is just purely for the 240 volt sockets. So I really didn't see or feel the need to have to complicate my 240 volt system at all. So this is my control panel. I say control panel, there's not really much to it. These switches here, one just simply turns the fridge on and off, okay. That fuse turns what we call our food preparation area, just this area here, turns the white LEDs on. This fuse, you would have seen it installed in a previous video, but basically I have a fan behind the, let's see if we can see it. I have that fan there. If I turn it on, there you go. So that basically is extracting. The only thing I am going to do is take that off and fit some sort of like a mosquito mesh behind it, because of the louvered grill outside. Flies or mozzies can still fly in through that, and you know, because obviously the fan's not on all the time. And then the fourth switch is a spare, simple as that. Then we've got the BMW 712, and this is just quite simply to turn the inverter on and off. That's it. And that of course is my radio without the front on. And that, ladies and gentlemen, I've got to fit that properly yet. That, ladies and gentlemen, that's my electrical setup. That is the heart of the van, basically. I don't think I've made any mistakes in that wiring. Everything is doing the job that it's supposed to do. The main isolator switch, that was a big thing for me, that I really needed to know that if I turn that off, it absolutely isolates every single bit of the 12-volt system so that I can do any repairs. And so yeah, right guys, that's pretty much it. You know, I've brought this video out, or I've made this video purely because I've been asked many times, like I said at the beginning. I've had a few emails and I've had many direct messages through Instagram asking particular questions about the system. How have you run that and what have you done? So I thought I'll do a complete walkthrough of my whole system. Anyway, right guys, thank you for watching. If you're not already subscribed to my channel, please consider subscribing. If you've liked the video, if it's been helpful to you in any way whatsoever, give it a thumbs up, a like, and tell me what I'm doing wrong possibly in the comments, but be gentle with me, yeah? So guys, catch you all later, and the next video will be coming out very soon, within the next sort of 3-4 days. So I'll catch up with you soon. Cheers guys.